morning, dear Sunday school teacher. I'm so happy to be with you today on this platform of Adult Sunday School. Our lesson today is titled Be Forgiving and Loving from the book of Philemon, chapter 1, verse 4, right down to 21. We are going to be studying a story that involves three major characters: Apostle Paul, Philemon, and a runaway slave by name Onesimus. So Onesimus used to be a slave with a rich man and a man who loved Christ by name Philemon in Colossae. And so he made away with some goods which we don't know specifically what those goods were, and ran to Rome to seek refuge. And he crossed the path of Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul was in prison in Rome at the time. And so when he came in contact with Onesimus, he shared Christ with Onesimus, and Onesimus received Christ and grew in his faith. And based on the teachings of Apostle Paul, Onesimus saw that there was a need for him to return to his master Philemon and make restitutions for what he did. And this was a huge task for him to do, because in those days, slaves were punished mercilessly if they committed a crime or disobeyed their master. So Paul needed to step in to write a letter, a personal letter to Philemon, appealing that he should set his runaway slave free, because he is now a believer in the faith and he is doing exactly what Philemon should have done if he was with Apostle Paul in Rome. And so the content of this lesson has to do with that, the content of the appeal, what Apostle Paul actually wrote in the book of Philemon, convincing or urging Philemon to understand why it is important for him to forgive Onesimus based on what he did. And so Paul began his letter by appreciating and acknowledging the work that Philemon had been doing and is continuing to do in the faith. He tells Philemon that he is so impressed with the way he is sharing his faith and the love that he's experiencing. And he goes ahead to say that he is praying constantly for Philemon. And he goes ahead to tell Philemon that I am not giving you an order, despite the fact that you are my spiritual son, but I am urging you to consider this slave by name Onesimus, who is now a changed person and is doing the work of Christ, the same work that if you were here with me in Rome, you should have been doing. He goes ahead to say that he is a prisoner of Jesus Christ, and Philemon should consider his old age and many other factors he did mention if you look at verse 7 right down to verse 10. And so Paul insists that, or he emphasizes that Onesimus used to be a poor slave who did not understand who he was. He lived in the old nature, but he was separated from Philemon for a purpose, and this was divinely orchestrated. This appeal letter is very significant, showing the love and concern of Apostle Paul as a mediator to ensure that Philemon forgives Onesimus. And Paul says that he will take the account or the charge to pay the debt what Onesimus owes Philemon while he was a slave with him, and all the things that he took away from him. So one of the important lessons we can learn from here is that the three characters have an important role to play when it comes to forgiveness and unconditional love. Paul was so confident in his letter that Philemon will forgive Onesimus and welcome him. There is no evidence in scripture of what happened after the letter was written and taken to Philemon. But we know that Apostle Paul is confident, based on what he wrote, that since all of them are partners in sharing the gospel, he is confident that Philemon will do even more than what he expects him to do. Likewise, in our relationships with our Christian brethren, we should always learn to forgive those who have offended us as much as Philemon would do. And if you have a friend or someone you're close to who had offended someone, it is important for you to tell the person to make restitutions with that person, because once we become believers or workers in the Lord's vineyard, there is a need for us to make restitutions with one another if we offended them in one way or the other. So this story is a very significant story we can learn from when it comes to being a mediator like Apostle Paul, or being a sinner who has recognized his sin and wants to change, or being the person who is offended and wants to, and has the ultimate duty or responsibility as a believer to forgive one another. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you share the video to other Sunday school teachers so that they can learn and be edified in the way they pass on their student-centered lesson. I am going to attach the lesson plan of this lesson, which is very rich, of course. I encourage you to take a look at it and make use of it during your lessons. Thank you very much. My name is Shay Jimmy.